Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. The next stop on our 30 teams for 30 days is going to put us in Cincinnati. We're going to be talking about this very young Reds team that, barring injuries, could put it together and get above 500. Again, not chasing any wild card or postseason hopes, but again, 500 is pretty good for a young team with not a great pitching ballpark. Overall, this team was 77 and 85, and they did have contributors, mostly young guys. Unfortunately, one of them is no longer with the team. That's Jonathan India. He led the team in on-base percentage and walked, while Spencer Steer led the team in RBIs, and Ellie De La Cruz led the team in everything else. I do want to go ahead and talk about Spencer Steer. Fantasy-wise, his 2023 was great and definitely left us wanting more. His 2024 fluctuated. There were a few stats that went up or went down and honestly didn't really make a whole lot of sense. In 2024, he had more games but less at-bats, more RBIs but less hits, more walks but less home runs, and a dip in all of his percentages. Now, I'm not a StatCast guy, but those show some concerning underlying metrics. Again, not really a metric guy, but were those stats all just volume-based? The fact that he did get in so many games and less at-bats, really. I mean, more games but less at-bats. Did you just get lucky? So that leads me to another guy who was just really concerning. Now keep in mind, I talked about being a young core. Spencer Steer is 27, so he's on the older end of that. But now we're going to move to Jeimer Candelario, who's the oldest of this group. I believe he's 31. Despite being 31, he's only had 2 decent seasons, one of them being a breakout season in 2021 with the Tigers. And then again in 23, he was doing pretty well, spent time with some other teams, and has not produced anywhere close to the clip he was previously in those 2 other years. Keep in mind, he did have injuries that kept him out and reduced his power in 2024. But he did hit 20 home runs, and he did have 56 RBIs. However, he did strike out 114 times, so that is nothing that's going to help or give any sort of consolation for a .225 batting average. The 2 more guys who I'd like to consider in this young core, barely hanging on to their 20s, include TJ Friddle and Jake Fraley. TJ Friddle missed half the season due to injury, but did continue his twice as many strikeouts and walks trend, but did produce 13 home runs and 56 RBIs in 50 plus less games in 24 than he did in 23 when he produced 18 and 66. He did cut his stolen bases by 2/3, going from 27 to 9. That's not good. Jake Fraley, on the other hand, did hit 20 stolen bases for the second year in a row, but he cut his home runs by 2/3, from 15 to 5, and decided he'd cut his RBIs in half from 56 to 26. So more than half. That's not good. After touching on subjects like injuries and not being good, we're going to move to Matt McLain, who broke onto the scene in 2023 with almost 300 batting average. He had 16 home runs, stole double-digit bases, and absolutely left me, as a fantasy owner, wanting more. So 2024 was a time I was absolutely ready to throw him on my team. Then spring training hit, he got hurt and decided, you know what, I'm going to sit out the entire 2024 season. Now, for his own health, that was great. For fantasy owners, that was terrible. But he will be looking to get back on the field and produce again at a high clip, again, in this very young core. And the final guy we're going to talk about in this core is Tyler Stevenson, the man behind the plate. Well, he had a decent 2024, but he's going to be hurt the first part of 2025. That's very unfortunate for Reds fans because your backup is Jose Trevino. Now, don't get me wrong, he's decent, but he's not Tyler Stevenson. Tyler Stevenson is one of the better offensive catchers in the league, so taking him away from a core where he is a veteran more so than a newcomer like Matt McLain, like Spencer Steer, they're going to lose some leadership. Now, Trevino is absolutely good behind the plate, but again, he's not sexy. He's not Tyler Stevenson. So, again, they're really going to rely on their pitching, which we're going to get to in a second, to keep him in games. In a hitter-friendly ballpark, the pitching is not what you want to keep you in games. This young rotation absolutely has some potential. They did pick up a few more pieces. They lost a few of the older pieces. So, again, even younger, but again, the potential is absolutely there if they can put it all together, if they can stay healthy. I know those are 2 big ifs. There are only 4 names you need to know in these team leaders. Wins and losses go to Andrew Abbott. Holds go to Fernando Cruz. Saves go to Alexis Diaz. Everything else goes to Hunter Green. Before we get to any specific players, I want to touch on this stat that involves all of the pitchers who started games for the Reds in 2024. All of them combined for 51 quality starts. If you think back to a few videos ago, we talked about the Phillies, we talked about the Mariners, and those 2 teams had between 50 and 70, maybe even more, quality starts between their top 4 pitchers. The Reds had 51 with all of the guys that started games for them. Again, Great American Ballpark is not a pitcher's ballpark. It is absolutely a hitter's ballpark. So, some of the stats that we see for these pitchers, they may not seem eye-popping to think, wow, it's a 4+ ERA, that's not great. But in that ballpark, along with the Colorado Rockies ballpark, a 4 ERA isn't bad. Because however much is getting it up to 4, they have to do something to keep it below 4. So when they're playing away from home, that could be when they're getting a few more favorable starts. A few more of those quality starts. And now we get to the individual players. Pretty much big old disappointments. Graham Ashcraft, Frankie Montas, and Nick Lodolo. Now hold on. Nick Lodolo is absolutely the best of this group that we just named, and he's absolutely going to contend to be the ace on this team. Now, he's got some stiff competition in Hunter Green, but Lodolo was hurt to start the season last year. He did have a history of health concerns, but he's looking to be over them now. So, in 2024, he did start 21 games. He had 8 quality starts, and he won 9. Now, that came to the tune of a 4.76 ERA. Now, I'm not saying that's okay, but it's not okay, it's bad. But, was his whip better? He had a 130, so that's not great. He gives up some walks, more walks than probably what he should, but he does strike out quite a few guys. So, again, there's some potential for him to have more strikeouts, and if he is such a fly ball pitcher, hey man, let some of those not go over the fence, you know? I'm confident Nick Lodolo is going to bounce back. He is going to be a 1-2 combo with Hunter Green. Those two guys are going to be great. I hope that they can keep the ball in the ballpark and that, again, they can stay healthy because they are going to be key contributors to getting this team to 500. We touched on walks, we touched on home runs, but we have not touched on Andrew Abbott yet. He did lead the team in wins and losses last year, but he gave up 52 walks in 138 innings and 25 home runs. Now, you would think that is ugly, terrible, must have a 5 or 6 ERA. Nope. He has a 3.22 ERA, and he had 9 quality starts. So, here's the thing with Abbott. He's either going to give you like 6 or 7 clean innings or like 4 or 5 ugly, labor-intensive innings. But a third of the time, he'll give you a quality start. Again, that's not terrible. Speaking of not bad, and someone I'm actually really excited about, because I feel my fantasy teams, Rhett Lauder. This guy started 6 games last year, 2 wins, 2 losses, and had an ERA of 1.17 and a whip of 1.27. His whip was higher than his ERA. Now, he did strike out 22 in those 30 innings and walked 14, so that's not sexy. But, again, he's very impressive, someone I'm looking forward to, and someone I hope gets healthy, because right now it looks like he's going to start 2025 on the IL, and he's going to start AAA, but the idea is he's going to come back soon, hopefully, and get into this rotation because, again, they're having some injuries, having some concerns. Speaking of concerns, though, their bullpen does not seem to have many, if any. Now, they did lose a few big pieces, but they brought in a few that, in my opinion, made it stronger. The main concern was, other than Alexis Diaz, their closer, the Reds lost 3 of their top relievers. So, what were they going to do? Well, they went out in free agency and trades and made their bullpen, again, stronger, in my opinion, because they brought in guys who were already in higher leverage situations or had worked in closer positions already. Now, speaking of the closer situation, Alexis Diaz, buddy, you are flirting with disaster. You have a 3.99 ERA, so you are right on the edge of 4. As a closer, that's not good, man. You had a 1.3 whip. Now, I'm not saying that's not bad, because it's not good. But the most concerning part was that your strikeouts fell from a 2.4 to 2.6 area to 1.8. Your numbers went from 80 to 90 strikeouts in 60-some innings to 60 strikeouts in 60 innings, or around there. That is definite regression, and that is very concerning. Transition from the bullpen to the additions. Let's go ahead and keep with bullpen talk. They lost their top 3 guys, but they got Josh Delmont, who pitched great with the Royals, Scott Barlow, who pitched great with the Indians, not the Guardians, the Indians, and then finally, I'm excited about this guy, Taylor Rogers, not Tyler Rogers, Taylor Rogers, the brother of Tyler, who was fantastic when he was in San Francisco. That was a 1-2 punch that came from the same family. So those three guys right there will be replacing the guys who had higher ERAs, decent strikeout numbers, but maybe not as reliable as these guys coming in. So I'm really excited. Some other guys they brought in to help the team. Gavin Lux came over in a trade. He's going to be playing second base because they got rid of Jonathan India. I don't know why they did that because they make terrible decisions. But then they also brought in pitcher Brady Singer. Now, this guy had a breakout 2 or 3 years ago and was actually doing really well with the Royals and then kind of fell off a little bit. Now, he does still have some talent. He's definitely got arm strength. He can go innings. He's a workhorse. And now we're going to get to the departures. As we talked about, the 3 holds guys for them. Fernando Cruz went to the Yankees. They also lost Lucas Sims and Justin Wilson. Again, those 3 guys definitely stepped up when they needed them to, but they're gone now. They're with other teams. They also lost Jonathan India, like talked about before, so terrible decision on their part. And the 2 veterans they lost, first baseman Ty France, who's bounced around a little bit, and Frankie Montas. Now, he wasn't as sexy as Reds fans wanted him to be. As someone who's a Yankees fan, he definitely wasn't sexy for us. He started like 1 game, 2 games at that. Oakland had him for a little bit, and now he's with, who's he with? The Mets. And he's hurt. At the end of this day, this team is absolutely a 500 team. They did not have one of their best players in the field last year or at the plate, so he can add another double-digit home runs, double-digit stolen bases, along with some of the other guys, Spencer Steer, getting them in scoring position, getting around the base. Absolutely a 500 team. If health prevails on the pitching side, Nick Lodolo, Hunter Green, those 2 guys are absolutely going to be able to do good things. I'm confident that this team will be 500, not chasing wild card, but again, competing and making sure people know who they are in a hitter's ballpark. Fantasy-wise, definitely have some hitters. Again, the only 2 pitchers I would look at, Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green. The next top is going to be Chi-Town, heading to Chicago to talk about the Cubs. I'm excited because I get to talk about one of my favorite players, Jameson Taillon. This is J-Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.